At 3 a.m., the city was wrapped in silence. Only the harsh white light of the fluorescent bulbs illuminated the convenience store in a cold, lifeless glow. I was 35, working the late-night shift at this store, stocking new products, mopping the floor, and ringing up customers. That was my life now. All of it. People didn't know my name. They just called me the guy who works the late shift. And that was fine. That's how I wanted it. I didn't want to get deeply involved with anyone. Once, I had a glorious past. After earning an MBA from Harvard, I started my own consulting company at 28. In the turnaround industry, they called me a king of corporate turnarounds. I saved companies on the brink of bankruptcy, one after another. Requests came flooding in from around the world. They said that there was nothing I couldn't fix. But 3 years ago, everything came crashing down. I made a catastrophic mistake in a large corporation's restructuring project. As a result, thousands lost their jobs, and a chain of bankruptcies was set off. And the CEO I respected most, someone I considered a mentor, took his own life, unable to bear the responsibility. Since that day, I abandoned everything: my company, my name, my future. Now, this convenience store was my life. The squeaky sound of the automatic door broke the silence. It was unusual for someone to come in at this hour. I turned around to see a woman in a suit, probably in her early 30s. She had silky black hair tied back neatly and sharp, defined features. But her face was pale, and there were deep, dark circles under her eyes. She staggered into the store, her hand gripping the shelf for support. She's about to collapse. I rushed to catch her fragile body before she fell. "Are you okay?" Weakly, she nodded in my arms. "I'm sorry. I'm just a little anemic," she said, her voice so faint it seemed like it could disappear at any moment. I sat her down in a chair by the counter and hurried to the back to get her some water. "Thank you," she said, with a weak smile, apologizing. That smile, though weary, still carried an air of grace. She's fighting something. That was my gut feeling. After that, she started coming into the store several times a week, always late at night, buying energy drinks and rice balls, her face exhausted. As I rang up her items, I glanced at the papers peeking out of her bag. The name Sakuraba Manufacturing was visible. It was a manufacturing company for a popular product. I'd heard rumors recently that their management was struggling, but that didn't concern me. I wasn't planning to get involved with anyone's company again. One night she came into the store, and this time she sat in the eat-in space and began talking on her phone. "Yes, I'll sign and send it by tomorrow. The conditions are tough, but at this point, I have no choice. I need the funds." Her voice was desperate, almost pleading. I continued to stock the shelves but couldn't help but glance over at her. On the table in front of her, I saw a contract laid out. I couldn't avoid noticing it. At that moment, my body froze. Clause 3 of the contract had a detail that couldn't be overlooked. This wasn't a mistake. It was a carefully crafted trap. If she signed this, her company would essentially pledge all of its assets as collateral. In 3 months, it would certainly go bankrupt, and the company would be taken over. "Don't get involved," I told myself firmly. I would never interfere in someone else's business again. But she now reached for the pen, preparing to sign. If I let this happen, her company would be finished. Hundreds, no, thousands of lives would be ruined. My hands trembled. The nightmare of that day 3 years ago rushed back. The face of my mentor, just before he passed. But as I watched her, fighting so desperately I couldn't stay silent. "I'm sorry." Before I knew it, I had walked over to her table. She looked up, surprised. "You shouldn't sign that contract," I said. "What?" She looked confused. "The clause about the debt, it's misinterpreted. This isn't a funding agreement, it's essentially a transfer of assets," I said. calmly pointing out the flaws. Her face slowly turned pale as she processed my words. But my lawyer checked it. Most likely, the other lawyer cleverly manipulated it, I replied. If you sign with these terms, in 3 months, your company will legally be taken over. She clutched the contract tightly in her trembling hands, then looked at me directly. Who are you? She asked, with a mixture of surprise and a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Just a convenience store worker, I answered, trying to walk away. But she grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go. Please, can you explain more? I don't know what to do anymore. Her voice was full of desperation. I paused. I shouldn't get involved, but I couldn't refuse. All right. I sat down next to her, explaining the clauses of the contract, highlighting the risks she hadn't seen. A few nights later, she came back into the store. Thank you for saving me from the worst outcome. I nodded silently. She seemed like she wanted to say something but hesitated. I know this is a big ask, but could you help me understand the industry trends? I need some advice. She laid out an article from a public economic journal in front of me. The seriousness in her eyes made it clear she was clinging to any hope she could find. I scanned the article, then paused for a moment before offering some analysis. Wow, she said, surprised. I never considered that. It's like you see everything. She then opened up, speaking candidly. The lawyer who reviewed the contract, he's been a family friend for years. He might not have noticed the trap. I have no one else to turn to. Her honesty stirred something deep inside me. From that night on, she began coming to the store nearly every night, bringing stacks of business documents, seeking my advice. We spent hours analyzing the details, and despite the overwhelming workload, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like I was alive again for the first time in 3 years. One evening, a man in an expensive suit entered the store. In his late 30s, he had sharp eyes and a confident air. He spotted Misa and approached her casually. Misa, what are you doing here? Her expression faltered. Kanzaki, what are you doing here? He glanced at me, then smirked. Is this your new consultant? His tone was condescending. I can save your company, you know. Your father would want me to help. I could sense his manipulation. Kanzaki was from a major investment fund, and he was eyeing Misa's company, trying to take control. Who exactly are you? Her eyes were filled with surprise and a glimmer of hope. Just a convenience store worker, I answered, trying to return to the counter, but she stood up, grabbed my arm, and wouldn't let go. Please, can you explain a little more? I don't know what to do anymore. Her voice was a desperate cry for help. I froze for a moment. I shouldn't get involved. I might make someone's life worse again. But when I looked into her eyes, I couldn't bring myself to reject her. All right. I sat down beside her and carefully explained each clause of the contract, pointing out the risks she hadn't noticed. 3 days later, she appeared in the store again. Thank you so much for the other day. Thanks to you, I was able to avoid the worst-case scenario. She bowed her head deeply in gratitude, and I simply replied with, No, it's nothing. She seemed like she wanted to say something more, but then hesitated and, with a slight sigh, began to speak. I know it's a big request, but could you give me your opinion on the situation in the industry right now? She spread an article from an economic journal across the table. The desperation in her serious eyes was palpable. I read through the article, thought for a few minutes, and then pointed out several possible strategies from her competitors, as well as market changes. Wow, she gasped. I never considered that. It's like you can see everything. Then she sighed, speaking more honestly. The lawyer who reviewed the contract is a longtime family friend. Maybe he didn't notice the trap. I haven't had anyone to talk to openly like this. Her words stirred something inside me. From that night on, she started coming to the convenience store almost every night. She would bring large amounts of business documents, and I would quietly analyze them. The time spent alone with piles of papers in the back room wasn't unpleasant. On the contrary, it felt like I was alive again for the first time in 3 years. One night, a man in a sharp suit entered the store. In his late 30s, with sharp eyes, he approached Misa casually. "Misa, isn't it? What are you doing here?" Misa's face immediately became tense. "Kanzaki, what are you doing here?" The man, Kanzaki, looked at me briefly, then gave me a cold, dismissive glance. "What's with the humble hobby of visiting a convenience store in the middle of the night? Or is this guy your new consultant?" Kanzaki shrugged theatrically, clearly mocking me. "That's an interesting joke," he said, eyeing me again, as if to dismiss me completely. Misa retorted firmly, "It's none of your business." But Kanzaki didn't lose his confident smile. "It's not none of my business. I'm worried about you. And your company. I can save you both." He leaned in with a chilling grin. "I suggest you accept my proposal. Your company's got maybe 2 months left. Before that, you'd better accept my terms." With that, Kanzaki left the store, his words hanging heavily in the air. The silence returned after he left, and Misa let out a small sigh. "He's Tatsuya Kanzaki. He's the head of a major investment fund." Misa continued, her voice trembling slightly. "We've known each other since childhood, but now he's trying to buy my company." I stared at her. She sighed deeply before continuing. "I might need his help to save the company, but I can't trust him. His offer doesn't sit right with me." She looked down at the table, a deep sadness in her expression. Tears welled up in her eyes. Underneath the perfect image of a company executive, the real woman, the one struggling, was finally showing herself. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked softly. I hesitated for a moment, then replied quietly, "I'm Yamato." "Yamasan?" She said my name with a warmth that felt strangely comforting. "It's been a long time since I studied management. I don't have all the answers, but I do have some knowledge." I spoke carefully, staying within the truth, but not offering too much. "Now, though, I'm just a convenience store worker," I added, almost under my breath. She shook her head gently. "That can't be true. Your analysis was more accurate than any consultant I've met." She looked at me with those serious eyes, a pleading tone in her voice. "Please, teach me how to save this company." From her voice, I couldn't look away. I couldn't refuse her. "All right, I'll help you, within what I can." And so, from that moment on, we met at the store every night. She would bring me massive piles of business documents, and I would silently analyze them. The hours we spent alone, facing the mountains of paper in the back room, felt oddly fulfilling. For the first time in 3 years, I felt alive. One night, a man I didn't recognize came into the store. Dressed in a high-end suit, with sharp eyes and a confident air, he looked like he had a purpose. He spotted Misa and walked toward her casually. "Misa, isn't it? What are you doing here?" Misa's face turned tense in an instant. "Kanzaki, what are you doing here?" The man, Kanzaki, took one glance at me and then smirked. "What's with you? Coming to a convenience store in the middle of the night? Or is this guy your new consultant?" Kanzaki shrugged mockingly. "Well, I guess that's an interesting joke," he said, his eyes dismissing me completely. Misa snapped back at him. "It's none of your business." But Kanzaki didn't lose his smirk. "It's not none of my business. I've been concerned about you and your company. I can save both of you." He leaned in a bit, a chilling grin on his face. "You've got 2 months at most. Accept my proposal before then, or your company is finished." With that, Kanzaki left the store, his words hanging heavily in the air. She continued, her voice full of pain. "He's a childhood friend, but to save the company, I might need his help." but there's something I just can't trust about him. I picked up the business card Kenzaki had left behind. When I saw the company name on the back, my expression hardened. I know this investment fund. It was the Hageta Fund. Misa, you must not accept this man's proposal. My voice grew stronger without meaning to. Their goal isn't revival. It's dismantling. They'll sell off the valuable departments in real estate for a high price, making a profit, and then ruthlessly discard everything else. They don't care about the lives of the employees. Misa bit her lip. I know, but I have no other choice. If I don't accept Kenzaki's offer, I'll lose everything anyway. Who else can help me? I had no answer to her words. I knew the right path, but I didn't have the strength to follow through on it. The next day, I received a call from Misa. The final financing negotiation will be this weekend. If we're rejected, it's really over. Her voice trembled with fear over the phone. Can you take a look at the presentation materials? I opened the materials she sent me and froze. This wouldn't work. Misa, this won't get approved with these materials. This won't work, I said, sighing deeply, but there's no time left. The negotiation is the day after tomorrow. Her voice cracked with a hint of tears. I took a deep breath and made a decision. Come to the store tonight. I'll rewrite the materials from scratch. That night, after my shift ended, we went to a diner and worked on the materials together. Misa stayed by my side as we worked until morning. The completed materials were, despite everything, perfect. All the information the funding officer needed was laid out logically. This should definitely work, I said. Misa nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Yamasan. If it weren't for you, I would have already given up. On the morning of the weekend, Misa went to the final financing negotiation with the perfect materials I had stayed up all night to create. That night, I received a call from her. It was no good. With just those words, I understood everything. The result was brutal. Was it rejected? Yes. They said there was no future potential. Misa's voice was drowned in despair. It was such a perfect set of materials. You worked so hard on it. After a long silence, she spoke again, her voice breaking. The bank officer quietly told me at the end, the materials were perfect, flawless, but the pressure from Kanzaki's fund was too much. I clenched my teeth hard. So it was his doing. There's something worse, Misa added, her voice trembling. Kanzaki's fund has made a formal buyout proposal. It's likely to be decided at the extraordinary shareholders' meeting the day after tomorrow. I clenched my fists tightly. Don't give up just yet. There has to be a way. But Misa's voice was weak. There's nothing else. Unless a miracle happens, unless we bring in a top-tier management consultant, there's no way to save this company. Her words pierced deep into my heart. Let's meet tonight. I just want to thank you one last time. I agreed to meet her at a park near her company. When we sat on a bench, Misa started speaking in a low voice. I've truly appreciated everything you've done for me, Yamasan. I'm so grateful. She paused for a moment and then continued, her voice filled with sorrow. I've made up my mind. I'm going to accept Kanzaki's proposal. I'll try to negotiate with him so that we can at least protect the employees' jobs. Her voice was filled with resignation. I'm sorry. I couldn't save the company my father had protected all these years. Her face buried into my chest, crying like a child. I quietly held her shoulders, embracing her gently. I won't run away anymore, I said softly. If that person exists, he's right here. Misa looked up, her tear-streaked eyes meeting mine. The world-class management consultant you need, the person you need is standing right in front of you. Misa looked at me in disbelief. I promise I'll save your company. The next morning, I put on my suit for the first time in 3 years. The venue for the extraordinary shareholders meeting was filled with shareholders and banking representatives. Kanzaki stood at the podium, confidently presenting his buyout proposal. If our fund acquires the management rights, this company will definitely be revived. His words caused the shareholders to nod with expectations. The chairman opened his mouth. Now, we would like to move to a vote on the Kanzaki Fund's proposal, but just then, the door to the meeting room opened quietly. Standing there was me, dressed in a black suit. Sorry for the wait. I scanned the room and clearly stated my name. I am Heito, a corporate restructuring consultant. The room fell into uneasy murmurs. I could see one of the senior shareholders gasping. Could it be the legendary turnaround expert Hato? The name sent a shockwave through the room. Kanzaki's face twisted in disbelief. I stepped up to the podium and faced Kanzaki directly. As the restructuring advisor for Sakuraba Manufacturing, I would like to speak. The chairman hesitated but nodded. Please, go ahead. I moved the materials onto the projector. There, I presented an analysis of Sakuraba Manufacturing's hidden asset values and the risks concealed in Kanzaki's proposal. Sakuraba Manufacturing is indeed in a management crisis right now, but this company holds great untapped potential. I began to speak, calmly but with overwhelming persuasive power. Before you is Kanzaki's proposal. At first glance, it seems attractive. However, in reality, it is nothing more than a plan to sell off the company's assets at a low price. The future of the employees and the 120-year history of this company are not a part of his plan. The room fell silent, as if the air was sucked out. A hasty decision here could jeopardize the long-term interests of all shareholders. With that, I made a firm declaration. I would like to propose that the vote on Kanzaki's proposal be temporarily postponed. Please give me 90 days. During this time, I will present a concrete restructuring plan that will show you the true value of this company. Kanzaki immediately interrupted, shouting, Wait, this guy is the one who failed disastrously 3 years ago and was banished from the industry. How can you trust him? The room erupted into murmurs again. I quietly locked eyes with Kanzaki. That's right. 3 years ago, I failed, I said, my voice calm but firm. I caused the loss of thousands of jobs and the death of my most respected mentor. The atmosphere in the room grew cold and tense. But because of that, I swear, I will never make the same mistake again. For the last 3 years, I've been thoroughly analyzing my failure and I've found it. A perfect formula for corporate restructuring. There was no hesitation in my eyes now. Please give me another chance. I will save this company, I promise. At that moment, Misa stood up. I believe in him, she said. I know better than anyone the strength that comes from learning from failure. Then, one of the senior shareholders spoke. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Hato's proposal. His mentor was someone I've known for a long time. I think it's worth listening to him. With that, voices in the room began to support the postponement of the vote. As a result, the vote on Kanzaki's buyout proposal was delayed for 90 days. From that day forward, my real battle began. As a restructuring advisor, I began working with Misa to help the company recover. I threw myself into the task of restoring the company. I held meetings with all employees, reduced unnecessary overhead, and introduced new technologies. I worked tirelessly, without sleep, pushing forward. At the same time, I started using my past connections to investigate Kanzaki's network. It's been a while, Yama. I met a friend, an expert in information gathering, at a late-night bar. I need evidence of Kanzaki's pressure on Sakuraba Manufacturing's business partners, I said. Also, do you think Kanzaki was behind my failure 3 years ago? Could he have been pulling strings behind the scenes? My friend nodded silently in response to my request. A few weeks later, decisive evidence arrived. It was a communication record showing that Kanzaki had intentionally leaked information about my project 3 years ago, causing market chaos. All of it had been to get Misa under his control. I confronted the executives of the business partners that Kenzaki had pressured. Kenzaki had always been obsessed with her. He thought that if he took over her company, he would also take her for himself. He had threatened us with that idea. With the evidence in hand, I went to the police. A few days later, the news broke that Kenzaki had been arrested. The media widely reported that Kenzaki had been behind my failure from 3 years ago. The company's atmosphere changed dramatically. Business partners and banks began to trust us again. On the 90th day, I stood before all the employees and presented the company's financial report. "We've turned a profit this quarter." The room erupted in applause. "Our sales are up 150% compared to last year. Starting next month, employee salaries will increase by an average of 20%. Tears of joy filled the employees' eyes. And most importantly, we've gotten this far without laying off a single person. This is the result of every one of you pushing through and giving your all." I looked toward Misa, then added, "This is thanks to Misa, who never stopped believing in the future of this company." Misa smiled proudly, tears still flowing. That night, I stood alone on the company's rooftop, gazing at the city lights below. I had done it. The burden I had carried for 3 years felt like it had finally come to an end. "Yama-san." Misa's gentle voice came from behind me. She stood beside me, quietly leaning against me. "Thank you so much for saving the company. You didn't just save the company's crisis. You've been there by my side, supporting me through the pressure and stress. When I'm with you, I feel like I can overcome any challenge." She looked straight into my eyes and said, "Please stay with me. Will you be my partner for life?" I was taken aback. "Me? Someone like me?" I whispered. "Someone who has failed so many times?" Misa smiled, tears in her eyes, and laughed with happiness. "It's because you've failed that I trust you. You've got the strength to rise up again. I want to build a future with you." I no longer hesitated. I pulled her into a strong embrace and buried my face in her hair. "I feel the same. I believe that with you, I can overcome anything." A year later, Sakuraba Manufacturing had become an industry leader, achieving remarkable growth. As the chief strategy officer, I led the company alongside Misa, now the CEO. One night, Misa and I visited that convenience store, the place where everything had started. "It's nostalgic, isn't it? This is where everything began." I nodded quietly. "You almost collapsed here, and I ended up supporting you. That was the beginning of our destiny." "Was it destiny, I wonder?" Misa said, smiling playfully. "No, it wasn't destiny," I replied firmly. "It was because I wanted to protect you, and I acted on it. It's the future we chose with our own hands. Together, we would continue to build a new future." Misa smiled brightly and nodded. "Yes, together." The soft lights of the convenience store at night continued to shine on the two of us. Once, there was a man who had lost everything and was living a life of struggle. And there was a woman who was desperately trying to save a company on the brink of bankruptcy. They met, supported each other, and rose together. This is a story of revival. The revival of a company, and the revival of two lives. Our future was just beginning.